Welcome to How to Share, a podcast that celebrates how we inspire others by sharing our stories. I'm Wynne Leon, and in this episode, my co-host Vicki Atkinson and I are with author Marc Ross. We ooh and ah over the electrifying world of Marc Ross's latest geopolitical thriller, Attacking the Dragon. In this episode, Marc delivers a compelling elevator pitch for his book, revealing how his distinguished career as a lawyer provided the real-world inspiration behind the gripping plot. We dive into a fascinating conversation about the intricate landscape of Chinese politics and initiatives and see how Marc boldly reimagines the classic Western thriller formula. Join Vicki and me as we celebrate the art of reinvention, exploring how accomplished professionals like Marc transform their expertise into page-turning fiction and embark on a thrilling second act as authors. Hear firsthand how Marc turned his lifelong dream of writing novels into reality, overcoming challenges along the way. This episode is packed with intrigue, inspiration, and actionable insights for anyone looking to excel not just in one career, but two. Don't miss your chance to meet Marc Ross and fall in love with Attacking the Dragon, a must-read for fans of international suspense and powerful storytelling. Hi, Marc.
Hi. Hi, Vicki. Hi, Wynne. So nice to see you both.
Well, Vicki,
Thank you for having me.
Vicki and I are thrilled to be talking with you because, of course, you've written this great geopolitical thriller, Attacking the Dragon, that was just released in September. So can you give us the elevator pitch for that book?
Sure. I'd be happy to. As everybody knows, China is very busy expanding its political reach, its economic reach, etc. And people aren't always very happy about that. So in my book, there is a secret group, don't know who it is, that is attempting to pull China back into its borders and attacking the Communist Party, attacking its Belt and Road Initiative, which is its main means of global expansion, and it's doing it via terrorist attacks of different sorts. So the idea is, well, Trump goes with tariffs and things like that. Here, we just kill him.
Oh, yes, right. And it sets up a great story.
We can kill him in the book.
Right. Well, and you mentioned the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, which we understand that as a lawyer, your work intersected with that very real Chinese initiative. Can you say more about how that sparked the idea for Attacking the Dragon?
The way it came about, actually, is I do write thrillers. This is my second published one. First one dealt with domestic extremists, so it's a little different. But I wanted to write something that was using my China knowledge and was using China's expansion, but I didn't want to write something that was like all the other books you've read. So I came up with the idea of China being more the victim rather than the aggressor, which we normally see it in Western fiction the other way around, and decided that the best way to attack China would be through attacking its Belt and Road Initiative. So that's how it really all came about.
I think Wynne and I, one of the things that we loved about your book, there's so much suspense, and it's definitely a thriller, but there was so much, I think, for me to learn about a part of the world that I don't know nearly enough about and about culture. But something like the Belt and Road Initiative was just it was fascinating to me because it was so pervasive, within the culture and had so much impact. But Honest to Pete is something I had never heard of before, not even in passing.
Right.
No, very few people have, unless you're involved in this. I mean, several months ago, there was a Belt and Road Initiative conference in, I think it was Singapore, where they had several thousand people coming to it. So within its world, it's a big thing. They've done projects in over 120 countries.
Wow.
They even did one in Italy, although most of them are in underdeveloped or undeveloped nations. So in its own little sphere. But it's interesting that you don't hear, for instance, U.S. politicians ever talking about it or taking action, or because one could argue that it's really a form of colonialism, because the idea is to spread China's influence. They also make money on it, but it's to spread their influence.
Right.
Yeah.
And it causes the countries that they help to incur debt that they owe the Chinese government. Is that right?
What happens is China says, we'll build a port for you, as an example, or a dam or an airport. This country doesn't have the money to pay for that. You're talking few billion dollars. So China says, we'll have a Chinese construction company and Chinese experts lead the way. We'll use local labor to do it. Now you got to pay the Chinese company. Sometimes these are Chinese private companies, sometimes they're state-owned companies. So for these countries to have the money to pay for it, they borrow money from Chinese banks, either private Chinese banks or government banks. So the money comes from the Chinese banks to the country. The country then turns around and pays the money to the Chinese construction company for their work. So the money has returned to China, but now this country hopefully has a very good airport. I hope they do. And although there have been some disasters, and now the country owes China or the Chinese banks a great deal of money. One of my expert friends tells me that there's over $1 trillion in debt owed to China from the Belt and Road Initiative.
Wow.
And that's only what we know about. So let's work on the assumption that there's lots we never know about.
Right.
Well, and what's so fascinating about all of that to me is that there are all those, there are layers to it, as sort of like a policy, for a government. But then there are also, those aspects of direct human benefit as well. So it's really hard to argue, because of the potential for doing good. That's still, that's there as well. How it's done is sort of like how the sausage gets made. You don't really want to know, but there can be some good outcomes for the people.
That's a very good analogy. And clearly there must be enough countries that are happy with the results, or the next country would know not to do it. But it continues to go on. And China is shifting the way it does it a bit. They're moving more towards advisory and service things rather than just these construction projects. But there's, for instance, a railroad that's been under construction in part of Asia now for years and is still not done and is a disaster. So these things happen.
Yeah. Fascinating.
It was a good launching point for the plot in the book.
That is true. Well, and you're the American businessman that's at the center of your book, Attacking the Dragon, Wes Robertson. At one point he says, "No, I don't know China, not even pretty well. And I disagree when foreigners say that they do, except for the few who go back to the Kissinger era. China's too big and complex and operates too much under wraps to claim that, or even, frankly, for most people to call themselves a China expert. But yes, I picked up a fair amount of knowledge about business and political attitudes, as well as how certain affairs are conducted." We know you have a lot of experience. Is that how you couch your wisdom when it comes to China?
Oh, I would not call myself a China expert. I have spent enough time there and am knowledgeable enough that I had no problem writing the book and using what I know, places I've been into, ranging from hotels I've stayed in, including some rather scuzzy ones, to tourist sites, to business meetings. I've met a lot of Chinese executives, as well as government officials and party members. So in that sense, I have a decent amount of knowledge. But to really call yourself an expert, by comparison, for instance, one of my friends is a professor at Columbia who has lived in China at different times and taught there. He's an expert.
Mhm.
I'm not in his league.
Yeah. Interesting.
But then
But
again,
still,
I don't think he could write a fiction book.
Right. To some degree, if you
yeah,
know too much, it's hard to then bend the corners, right?
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. He
right.
writes
That
very
probably
good
would get in his way.
nonfiction books.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned before we started recording that a lot of the hotels and places that scenes play out are places that you really spent some time at.
Yes, they are, and ranging from a hotel called China World in Beijing,
Mm.
which is an old hotel and has a very traditional Chinese feel about it,
Mhm.
ranging from a musician performing up in the balcony in Chinese music or Chinese instruments.
Mhm.
Although it's true, I actually have heard on these Chinese instruments remakes of American type songs like
Mhm.
Simon and Garfunkel's
Oh,
Yeah.
music.
oh,
Very strange
fun.
to much more modern hotels, which are absolutely gorgeous,
Mhm.
and the treatment is just fabulous at them.
Mhm.
So yes, I've spent a lot of time there, as well as once or twice in third-rate hotels when I got stuck somewhere.
Mhm.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. But you do that so well. I think one of the things that we appreciated about your book is it's so action-packed and you have to give it your full attention because there's so much going on.
Mhm.
And for people that don't have a lot of background or experience, even with Chinese names, I was paying careful attention, to
Mhm.
follow. But while you're doing all of that and the writing and there's so much going on with the characters and the people and the intrigue, what you and Wynne are talking about is also so true. I felt like I was there. Your
Mhm.
descriptions of
Thank
place
you very
were so
much.
powerful that while the action was happening, I didn't feel like I was a fish out of water. I felt like I was in it. It was
Thank you. That's very
beautifully
nice to say.
done.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you. And the names are a challenge,
Mhm.
um, but luckily the names are short. I mean,
Yeah.
if you were setting this in Russia, and you had that many
Mhm.
Russian characters
Oh,
with all those long names, that could be a
yeah.
little more difficult. But yeah, it
Right.
is,
Mm,
which is why, for one thing, there is a cast list of the cast of characters at
Mhm.
the beginning of the book.
yeah.
And one or two people have said to me that they sort of put a tab on
Yeah.
that and went back
Mhm.
to it on occasion.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was super helpful. But I guess one of my questions about that is, thinking about when you give characters names in books, were you extra, extra thoughtful about selecting names because of just any unintended references to families, cultures? Was that a harder thing to do?
That wasn't that hard for the Chinese names. The reality is, China has such a large population that if you're using true Chinese names, surnames, and first names, etc., it is almost impossible to come up with a name that somebody doesn't have.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, I have enough trouble with my name here,
Right.
so there I didn't worry about
Yeah.
it. But when I write characters in the U.S., like for Wes or Maria, yes, I do the work to make sure that there's no obvious that I can find
Right.
person that
Yeah.
has that name. I'll add
Gotcha.
an extra letter
Mhm.
to a name, to
Mm-hmm.
change it enough. So
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so you've written two thrillers that you've published, and
yes,
we understand that two more are in the works.
two more are in the works. One of them, which just went out to my first set of beta readers, is actually a follow-on to my first book.
Mm.
Oh,
Same characters, but a
exciting.
different story, sort of like you see in many
Right?
movies. Let's bring back the gang,
Yeah.
put the band
Oh,
back together. I am also giving thought to a sequel to Attacking the Dragon, but we'll wait and see
Hmm.
how that does. And
Hmm.
I've written a business thriller,
Hmm.
which I'm in the process of trying to see what I can do with at the moment. And
Yeah.
that relies heavily on my experience as a lawyer. But although it's set in the business world, it's very much a thriller.
Hmm.
We've got lots of, fake identities, people getting beaten, people getting blackmailed, all that good stuff you like
Yeah.
in a thriller.
Oh, that's so good, and hopefully that
ooh.
never happened to you as a lawyer.
No, no, thank
That's good.
God, no.
Glad to know that.
Yeah.
But you've written, I saw somewhere you wrote that you always meant to write novels, but it took a long while to get to it.
It,
Tell us
it
about your
did.
writing journey?
Sure. when I was in college, beginning of college, I debated internally whether to try and become a writer
Mm.
or to be a lawyer.
Mm.
Originally, lawyering was always the plan.
Yeah.
And I spent 2 summers writing, made a deal with my father where I'd spend half the day writing and half the day working on the house and the yard. Such a
Okay.
nuisance, but it was a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of that, I said, I could probably write and make a living, sort of like at that time, Harold Robbins was a big name in the world. I could sort of do that level, but I was never going to be like the authors I love, Saul Bellows, Norman Mailer, any of those people. So I said, all right, let's forget that idea. And so I went to law school and became a lawyer. And then several years ago, I sort of started doodling around with the writing.
Mm.
And I no longer care whether I'm ranked up there with Saul Bellows or the people today, DeLillo, people like that, Pynchon. No, I'm not them. And now it doesn't bother me.
Right.
Because I'm in a different stage, and this isn't my primary vocation. So that's how it got started, and I went back to it and started writing that first book, and then just said, "This is what I want to be doing," and so I just keep going.
Yeah. Well, there's so much true life in what you just said there, which is you learn to be you, that you're just going to write as you.
Yeah. And part of the way I like to write is I don't want you to read my book and say, oh, this is just like such and such. My goal is to write something that someone who likes such and such will like my book, but will not say that, oh, it's just sort of the same, And by the way, I love those thrillers. I read all the, investigator books, ex-CIA, ex-spy, doing this and doing that. I'm a big fan. Read all that stuff. But for my own writing, I want my protagonists to be different sort of people. So here, Wes is a businessman who is drawn into circumstances which he has no prior experience to fall back on.
Yeah. Well, I think there were 3 things that stood out for me were what you and Wynne are talking about, like really honoring your voice and not trying to be duplicative in any way. But there were 2 things that you wrote where I was like, oh, you get, kind of female readers also, kind of thinking from a gendered point of view. And one was, I'm not sure I'm saying her name right, but Tao. And for part of the story, she's using a cane, and there's a description of her, and she has a lot of power, and she wields it very well in a particular encounter. And you describe her walking out of the meeting, marching out, her cane aloft, right? And it's like, it was like a girl power moment. And then the scene where 2 characters, Wes and Maria, are having dinner in the State Department. And, from a gender point of view, the server assumes that Wes must be the ambassador, but here's Maria, who's a woman, a woman of color, right? But those little nuances, kind of thrown in. And then just a splash of humor. I laughed out loud about the games that translators can play when no one's paying attention, right?
I've always figured it actually goes on.
Yeah,
I've always assumed that's what they really do.
Yeah, but all of that to say, that's how you come through, right? And you're not being anyone else, but I think those were like little glimmers where I was like, oh, this is good, right?
Thank you. I enjoy doing that. I know that some people may say, oh, I can't believe he did that. And there's a scene, as you know, where I have one of our villains eating an ice cream cone while waiting for his secret meeting. I haven't seen that in too many movies, but it was fun. What the hell?
Yeah,
what the heck?
Exactly. Do you think that taking the time, had you become a writer when you were 20 something versus now after your business career? I mean, do you think that that's how it was intended to work out for you?
Um, that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I imagine so.
Yeah.
I've had a very nice career, still have a very nice career
Yeah.
as a lawyer. Uh, I've gotten recognition for my success as a lawyer. My clients appreciate what I do for them. So, unlike many lawyers who don't like being a lawyer, I like being a lawyer. I get annoyed sometimes, as everyone does with what they do, but I enjoy what I call the art of lawyering. So I'm quite happy with the decision I made.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
But I like where Wynne was going with that because I think it's sort of like the evolution of you, right? All the things along the way that have contributed to who you can be as a writer and as a storyteller, I think. You can't look at anything that's been in your path and say anything was not purposeful because you're bringing it all forward when you write.
Well, I think that's a very nice way to look at things, and I hope that there's a lot of truth in that.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you've had two very successful career paths, and this shows in Attacking the Dragon. I mean, great book, action-packed, full of all the wonderful things that we love, place, description, characters, as Vicki was just pointing out. I mean, and so what a blessing to be able to have both successful careers.
Thank you. That's very kind of you to say. I appreciate it. And I tell you, why do I write? I write because I enjoy it. And when people say to me, "Hey, I really liked that book," that makes me feel really good. That's why I'm doing this, for the mutual enjoyment of it and the fun of it.
Yeah.
Oh, so well said. You have to love it too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I do. I really do.
And
it's
you're
a lot
on
of work.
Yeah, it is a lot of work. And you're on a book tour right now, which is part of the other part of the work, right? The marketing work, but you get to have that feedback.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It is a big part of it, and dealing with agents and things like that. And it's hard not to feel that it's a distraction from what you really want to do, which is to sit down and write. But I guess that's part of it. And, we should all be so lucky that there's enough interest in us that we can do that.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Because otherwise it just becomes a journal, which is, again, worthy, all that other stuff. But if nobody's reading it.
Yes. Yes. I agree with you.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
My goodness. Well, thank you for writing Attacking the Dragon. Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you for coming on to talk about this. It's such a great conversation to get the behind the scenes, the in depth. So thank you for
Thank you. And I appreciate very much your having me. And I hope that the next one interests you as well. It's not set in China, but hopefully we'll find other things to spark you.
Well, I think your characters and your action, I think they translate across the world. So
yes, we will save a seat for you always. So don't worry. You do your part. Yeah.
I will. I will indeed. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Our music was written for us by the incredible duo of Jack Campora and Rob Koenig. For show notes and more great inspiration, see avitiva.com, avitiva.com.